And welcome to the show. Glad to have Jeff and Doug here. And my goodness, finally, Doug, we're getting cars on the track for real. Yeah, it's that time of year, right? Time to get excited.
It is an exciting time, Brett, and it's amazing. NASCAR has probably the shortest off season of any big-time sport. But by the time you get around to the 1st of February, everybody's antsy to get cars back on the track, and especially when you're counting down to the Daytona 500.
Jeff, this is it. I know at the CW, you're at the CW Charlotte, man. You guys got to be excited because you got a whole season worth of Xfinity races.
We are so excited. And, I've been a race fan since I was 5. I'm 57 now. So to have it on the CW, all 33 races, and it's great for the network. And I think it's great for race fans. Because when it comes to Xfinity Racing, they know what they're going to get and when they're going to get it and where they're going to get it. So they don't have to go to Amazon or NBC or Fox or Peacock. It's all in one spot. So we're fired up. And an interesting story, everybody at my household the other day after the Super Bowl seemed kind of down. I'm like, what's with you guys? They're like, there's no football. And basketball's a march away. And I'm like, yeah, but we have racing.
Yeah, well, exactly. I was thinking
Let's
today.
go.
Yeah, I was thinking, as Doug's talking about, it's the shortest off season. I was thinking today, and we might talk about this later, Doug, from now until the first weekend in November, there is National Series racing every single weekend between now and then. And by that point, we'll be halfway through the NFL season. And college football season will be in its final month.
It is amazing. I mean, and it's a grind. For the spectators, they love it because they're virtually entertained every week. I think sometimes for the participants, they're going like, could we catch a break here except for the one Sunday that we're off during Easter? But it is a big marathon game, and that's why even if you start off great and you win the Daytona 500, or you're like William Byron, you win 3 out of the first 8 races, you're not guaranteed anything at the end of the year.
Well, that's the thing, Jeff. I mean, the Daytona 500, and I think a lot of people don't understand why NASCAR starts its year with its biggest race. And it didn't used to. I mean, Doug and I go way back to where they used to actually start at Riverside.
Right. I can remember that. Yeah.
But Daytona has always been in February, back when it was at the beach, and then, going to the track it's at now. It's just one of those things. First of all, you got to start the season in a place where you can run this time of year when you're going to have this many races. But it is just a tradition that goes to the Daytona 500, and it's a big deal, and nobody disputes that.
Nobody does. It's what makes NASCAR. I mean, they start with their Super Bowl, and they should. And it's just, when you think about the history and it's just the awe of being in that track. I know when I'm leaving to go down or whatever, and you roll through that tunnel for the first time, it's amazing to just pull in and see the sea of people and all of that. And also, I talked with Chase Elliott earlier this week as they got ready to head down to Daytona, and we were talking about the 500, and he goes, I almost put it in a race by itself, because as Doug mentioned, you can win it and maybe still not make the playoffs, but he said right out loud, hey, this is something that I kind of almost view as its own entity and something we would love to win, and it's a separate thing sometimes.
The amazing thing is when you talk about it, Doug, I mean, you got, Denny Hamlin's won it, 3 times now, and yet you've got guys like, Darrell Waltrip went 17 years without winning it. Dale Earnhardt went 20 years without winning it. He won everything at Daytona except for that. And you got Kyle Busch now coming back, and I think this is his 20th attempt now, and then he has never won the thing.
Well, it eludes a lot of people, and it is strange, especially when somebody like Denny doesn't have a title, but he's pretty happy with 3 Daytona 500s. And I feel like over the years, it has gotten harder and harder to win this race. There was a time 20 years ago, you went to Daytona, there were 5 cars you could look at and say, these 5 can win the race. But now with the nature of this pack racing and how close it is and how there's always big ones and they're all connected, it's a real roll of the dice as who's going to win it. I honestly think there are a legit 25 drivers and cars that could win the 500.
And I think, Brett, that's what makes it so exciting. I mean, you don't know who's going to win that race, like Doug said. And for me, one of the most exciting things for me in the last few years was when Michael McDowell won and came, right there near the front of the pack. But it just, that next-gen car, they get in those packs. It's exciting to see. And, yeah, I mean, a wreck takes the top 15 cars out, somebody who's running 16th to 20th. Next thing you know, they're leading the race. So it lends itself to just the excitement.
We talk about it being a wild card type race, Doug, but when was the last time a guy won this race that you would say was a real wild card? I mean, you guys alluded to Michael McDowell. But he has always been a good, and I still go back to calling it a plate race. It's not a plate race anymore, but he's always been a good super speedway racer. Do we go back to Trevor Bayne, maybe?
I think Trevor Bayne is the last one. But look at it, Brett. Look at the guys that have won the 600 recently. And William Byron, I won't put in that. He's winning. He wins a lot. Michael McDowell, I'm sorry. I disagree with you a little bit there. Had never won a race. He wins the Daytona 500, the biggest prize that we have. He wasn't anybody I was expecting to win the race. I wasn't expecting Austin Dillon to win the Daytona 500 the year he booted Eric Almirola out of the way to go win it. That was a bit of surprise. Ricky Stenhouse, not as much, but still, when you look at the body of work for his career versus winning a Daytona 500, the 500 is really lopsided for him. So it's been, I think we're on a streak right now where folks that are long shots are winning the race. The least long shot, has got to be somebody like a Denny Hamlin that's proven they can do it over and over again.
And, and I think when you think about, like, we talked about Michael McDowell, and I said, great to see him win. And like you mentioned, Front Row Motorsports, their super speedway program has been tough. So I go back to what Doug said with Trevor Bayne. I think for me, that was probably when I was going, wait a minute, what? And I would even go back, when Michael won for the first time. I know it was a sad day for, the sport, but when Michael won, I don't know if anybody expected that day.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that's it. And you think about that, God, that's now 24 years ago? We're going back to, 2001?
Yeah, 2001, yeah. 24
and if
years.
you go back past, let's say 2000, the winners of the Daytona 500 were the religious leaders of NASCAR. It was Cale Yarborough and David Pearson and Richard Petty and Dale Earnhardt and Jeff Gordon and Jimmy Johnson. And since about, I feel like around 2005, that's when you started getting all of these upset winners and the Trevor Baynes of the world. Of course, I guess if you went all the way back to Derek Cope winning, that was the first unsung guy that we'd never heard of that won the 500.
I think of like Sterling Marlin. I think about, he won it back to back.
Yeah.
And so you talk about those guys, so I think what Doug's saying is right. You go from 2005 on, it got kind of crazy, but there's those kind of locked in. You knew they were going to be up front. You knew they were going to win, whether it was Petty, the Allisons, Sterling Marlin. Dale Jarrett won it twice.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the thing is, you got these guys that you expect to see running up front. You expect to see Denny Hamlin running up front. You expect to see, Joey Logano seems to understand how to drive in the pack. He's got kind of this Earnhardt, I can see the air type thing going about him. He hasn't been as successful lately because he seems to get caught up in these things, Doug, but he's a guy you expect to see running up front late in the race.
Oh, I fully expect him to be a contender. He's a smart driver. He's very calculated. But you mentioned it, Brett, the X factor at Daytona is so huge that at any moment something goes wrong and you and 5 of your companions are eliminated from the race. And I think that's part of what lends the tension to this race is that your chances can disappear in a nanosecond. And I feel like that's one of the reasons everybody's conservative those first 2 stages. People want a shot, but you got to get to, to finish first, you first must finish. You got to get to the end. And I know that sounds obvious, but it is.
You talk to race fans all the time. They'll go, yeah, I'll watch. Let me know when we get to the last stage because they know that's when everything's going to break loose. And like Doug said, it can happen in a moment. And I know for the last however many years, like I said, I've been a race fan. That last stage, I'm on the edge of my seat. I'm standing up. I'm oohing and ahhing because I know somebody's going to lose it and all heck's going to break loose. And we talk about drivers too. One that's kind of surprised me that I'd like to see what happens this year, Kyle Larson. All the races he won last year, I think was 6 races he won last year or whatever, but that Daytona 500 has eluded him. So I'm curious to see what Kyle does this year. The other Kyle.
The other
Right.
Kyle, yeah. Yeah, Kyles have not done well necessarily the Daytona 500. Well, each week on the Pit Reporters, we give you a chance to go to GoPRN.com and vote in our poll. And this week's question is, what's the best part of a Daytona 500 win? And your choices are, it's the biggest race of the year. Enough said. It's a career maker. It probably gets you in the playoffs, or it's just a good way to start the year. Last time we asked you, are you glad NASCAR is leaving the playoff format as it has been? And this was pretty close. 51% said no, they wanted to see a change. 49% said yes. When we come back, we have not sent as many cars home from Daytona this year as we have in years past. Is that a good thing? Stay with us.
Attention men, here's a great way to have more fun in bed and save money. If you want to take something like Viagra, they can give you a way to pay as little as $2 a pill. Yes, $2 a pill. Compare that to prices as high as $60 per tablet. These pills work for men to improve their performance and confidence. You'll love them. And now for the price of 2 or 3 pills, you can get 50 or more for around $100. You'll save hundreds of dollars off retail prices. That's enough to buy your date a nice dinner. Don't pay expensive prices for Viagra. Call now, order 50 or more of our blue pills, and pay as little as $2 a pill and save hundreds of dollars. Call anytime for confidential shipping.
Call Steelman Pills now. 800-475-8167. 800-475-8167. 800-475-8167. That's 800-475-8167.
Catch Kyle Petty's Back Then Again Country Countdown with Charlie and Debbie here on PRN, the Performance Racing Network.
I'm PRN's Doug Turnbull, co-host of the 5 to Go podcast, a weekly deep dive into 5 motorsports issues. Devin Kupka gives the Gen Z view.
One thing that I've never seen before, when the cars got 4 wide, everybody stood up cheering.
And championship-winning mechanic Dan Elliott leans on his decades in the garage and promoting.
Unless everybody is aware of the rules, then no, it's not fair for everyone.
Listen to the 5 to Go podcast on GoPRN.com and subscribe on Apple and Spotify.
Denny Hamlin slides up. He gets into the fence a little bit off of turn 3. We will see if he is able to sustain that.
So suddenly things change dramatically. It was the 2 youngsters for JGR. Now it's the veterans that are occupying the top 2 spots in turn 3. Hamlin out front for the 11th time today. Denny Hamlin gives up the lead.
Side by side going into one. Truex down low. Hamlin up high.
3 wide in front of him. On the bottom is Chastain. Up top is Austin Dillon with Gilliland in the middle. It's Bristol, baby.
Brett McMillian returns with more of the Pit Reporters here on the Performance Racing Network.
And welcome back, along with Jeff Taylor from the CW Charlotte, Doug Rice from PRN, Brett McMillian, glad to have you with us. You know, Jeff, it used to be that years ago, the duels to me were my favorite part of speed weeks before the Daytona 500, right, because there was so much drama. And it returned this year with 9 open cars trying to make the field. Is that a good thing to have that many cars trying to get into the Daytona 500? Does that say something good about where the sport is?
Absolutely. I think everybody wants to be a part of it. And it certainly adds to the excitement of the Twins. I'll still call them Twins. Yeah. I go back, but I think so. I mean, when you're talking about that and these guys trying to race in, it shows, I mean, there were times maybe where we couldn't get enough cars in the field to, it would just be whoever shows up goes. So I think to have that, yes, to have that, the sport's going in the right way. People want to be a part of it. And, it adds to me the excitement of the duels.
Doug, what are you thinking?
I love it. I think it's great, and I'm going to echo exactly what Jeff said there. This will help those dual 150s have an edge to them because there will actually be something at stake. You're not just going to be running those to determine the starting lineup. So I like it. And the fact that some people are going to go home, bad for them, but good to make this really count for something.
And you mentioned, we're talking big names that could go home.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
Jimmy Johnson.
Yeah.
Martin Truex.
Yeah. And then and the thing is, I think there's more star power, and you're talking about, Johnson's not a full-time driver anymore. Martin Truex is not a full-time driver anymore, even though he hasn't missed a race yet.
Right.
But, they're still sticking around. And then you added Elio Castroneves to the field, and he's going to get attention on Sunday regardless.
Right.
Because even though he's not running full-time IndyCar, he may still be the biggest name among IndyCar drivers. Wouldn't you say?
I would agree. Yeah. And the sticky part with all of it, though, is don't mess up. Don't be running 20th, get out of line, and wreck half the field. But I think in terms of Indy racing, yeah, I mean, listen, he's a legend. I've had a chance to talk to him many a times. Great guy, and I love to see what they're doing with it and giving him the chance to run it. Just make sure you run it right.
Yeah, I think he will. I have a feeling Elio. He's in a good car. That's great equipment that he's racing. So he's not got to go out there and race over his head. And I have a feeling we may see him hanging around in the back and just get the feel of it and get used to it, because he does have the benefit of a practice session earlier in the week. We'll see how he does then. But I don't expect any hijinks out of Elio Castroneves. He doesn't have to win this. But I don't know. I've got a sneaking suspicion that maybe at the end of the day, he may be around for this.
That's the thing. He's got they got a good sponsor to go with him. And hey, TV's going to pay attention to him. And I fully expect radio is going to pay attention to him because of who he is. And that's the reason NASCAR has put in place this provisional, allowing big-name drivers the opportunity, regardless of whether or not they have the speed, to get into this sport. He's the kind of guy that's going to get tons of attention among fans who aren't necessarily NASCAR fans internationally.
Right. I mean, bring over a couple F1 drivers. I mean,
yeah,
it would be awesome. But I think the cool part, too, is I think Daytona is kind of, for me, the perfect place to do it, too, because when you get out there, it's basically foot to the floor, turn left, and go. Do you know what I'm getting at? There's I know there's the science of it all with the drafting and all that, but I just think for somebody to do this at this track, is it easier, Doug Rice? I don't know. In terms of other tracks?
I think there is an easier venue. That Daytona is an easier venue than, say, if you came out and you went to Charlotte or Kansas or Darlington or something like that. That it'll take less time to get used to it. The speed's not going to bother Elio Castroneves. The way these cars handle it might. I mean, he's not going to go out there and win the pole, but I think he's going to be respective, and I think he wouldn't do this if he didn't feel confident that he could go out there and represent. And I kind of like this rule. I'm okay with it. If they want an F1 driver to come over, or if Joseph Newgarden wants to come over, or somebody else and run a race, more power to it. The more eyeballs we get, the better.
Well, and I was thinking immediately when they announced this rule, and whether or not it's used at Daytona this time, I immediately thought Pato O'Ward at Mexico City. But unfortunately, IndyCar's running that weekend,
right?
at the Gateway. But there could be opportunities down the road to have some of these other drivers step over and try stuff.
I think about Chicago, or any of the road courses. Go to Watkins Glen or Sonoma to bring in some of those Indy guys on the road courses. See what would happen. I mean, we know the background, that Shane Van Gisbergen has and stuff like that. So put them on a road course. Atlanta. I don't know.
Yeah.
As Doug said. But I think, it is great for the sport. And I think anytime you can add stars to it, so be it. Because I think that people want to hear the stories too. You get some of those characters involved.
Yeah. And I agree with you guys both, Doug. And I think it's great. I think the fact that we're sending people home this week, and it's not just one guy, multiple people are going home. Too bad for them. But it gives this sport, it may Thursday seems be important again. The duels are important, which is only good for the sport that is putting eyes on the sport earlier in the week than it has in the past.
I like it. I think it's all positive. I don't think you will see this world-class driver rule abused either. It's not going to be used every week. But I think for something like the Daytona 500 or possibly a couple of the road courses, if some of the IndyCar drivers do want to cross over when they've got an open weekend, I think there's a very good chance of that. So it got a lot of attention now because it's one of the most popular drivers on the planet and maybe easily one of the best known. I mean, Elio won 4 Indy 400s or Indy 500s, and he won Dances with the Stars, and he's done everything else, including winning SRX race. So he's the right guy to be the beta test for this.
If he were only dating Taylor Swift. No, maybe not. All right, when we come back, who needs to start off this season strong to get things turned around and to get their mojo back after a poor 2024? Stay with us.
When it comes to maintaining your engine to run at peak performance, trust Z-Max Micro Lubricant. Z-Max soaks into metal, so it's easy to add to your oil or gas to disperse carbon buildup in your engine, fuel system, and transmission. Protect your vehicle's engine to the max with Z-Max. Check us out at zmax.com or visit us on Facebook and Twitter to find out more about our full line of products. Remember the name Z-Max for your car, big rig, small engines, firearms, and more. That's Z-Max Micro Lubricant.
Down south, there's a place where moments are made at 180 miles per hour, where the thrills give you chills that are second to none. And at every turn, anything can and will happen fast. Some say it's just a NASCAR race, but it's Fast Atlanta, America's destination for acceleration, home of full throttle throwdowns, partying into the night, and unbelievable photo finishes. NASCAR returns to Atlanta Motor Speedway for the Ambetter Health 400, February 21st through 23rd. Get tickets now at atlantamotorspeedway.com.
Mark Garrow's your host for Garage Pass, here on PRN, the Performance Racing Network.
Time to pull down on the handle and start rolling them here at Las Vegas Motor Speedway.
The green flag flies at the Atlanta Motor Speedway.
We're about to contest the Coca-Cola 600.
We're racing at Texas Motor Speedway.
Now Keselowski goes way up the racetrack.
Here comes Harrison Burton. He rockets to the lead.
Trouble. Car goes around. It's Chris Buescher.
Joey Logano battles to the outside. They come back to the start-finish line.
Bubba Wallace looks inside. And now here's Byron. Takes a quick left to block him. They head back to one.
Here goes Ross Chastain. He's going to the bottom of the racetrack.
Bubba goes up. Blaney hits the outside wall off of turn 2.
Can Christopher Bell do anything with him? He gets down to the bottom of the racetrack.
Briscoe dives to the bottom of the racetrack. Side by side. They get loose. They spin. Now Tyler Reddick does a 360. So does Briscoe.
Heading into turn number 7 as he wraps it around. The crowd is cheering for Daniel Suarez here on this final lap.
Allmendinger gets into Alex Bowman. Ross Chastain back out to the front for the final time.
This is PRN.
We're back with more of the Pit Reporters on the Performance Racing Network.
Hey, welcome back. Along with Doug Rice and PRN, Jeff Taylor from the CW Charlotte, Brett McMillian, glad to have you with us. All right, as we start 2025, you know, Doug, there's some people that feel like they've got to get off on the right foot to turn around their mojo from 2024. So who are you putting on that list?
I will give you two right now off the top of the bat. We've already mentioned one, and that's Kyle Busch. He's coming off his first winless season in 2 decades. He wants to get back in the groove. He wants to show people that he is not over the hill, or at least at the bottom of the hill. He needs to get off to a good start, and that's more than just running well at Daytona. Bubba Wallace also didn't make the playoffs last year, and he's with a team that should be an automatic to get to the playoffs. And he usually runs well at these big tracks. You got to do more than that, though. You need to be in the top 10 in points when we get 10 races in. So Kyle Busch, Bubba Wallace, in my book, have to get out of the gate quick, and that's more than run well at Daytona.
I think if you ask most NASCAR fans, like Doug said, top of the list has got to be Kyle Busch. To go winless, you don't see that. You just don't expect that, and I know it's wearing on him, and so I think he wants to get out of the gate, and what a better place to do it than Daytona. And I think it'd make a lot of fans happy. Bubba Wallace is there. You know, I think Chase Elliott has to run better this year. I think that Chase, you know, with the Hendrick crew there and some of the younger guys that are there, I think he needs to get off to a good start. So I would say those two, but I agree with him also with Bubba Wallace. But I think everybody would say Kyle Busch right off the bat.
Well, Doug, you brought up, you know, you guys both talk about Kyle Busch. RCR made a lot of changes late in the year last year into the off season. Do you think those changes are going to be enough to turn that operation around?
Well, they have to be, because Kyle Busch's average finish dropped like almost by 2 points last year, and Austin Dillon had the worst year of his career. I think only 2 other full-time drivers finished lower in the final points than Austin did, and that's part of RCR too. So, to be honest, Austin has no place to go but up. After the kind of year he had last year, Kyle needs to win some races to reestablish his viability. I don't think he can afford to go another season winless. Can he do that? Sure he can. I don't think his talent is all drained out yet, but every race that goes by that he doesn't win, or he's at least not a factor, then I think doubt starts to creep in.
Agreed. I think, you know, as you get older and kids come into play and you've done all you can do and you've, won certain things, I agree with that. Absolutely. It's just one of those deals where, and the changes they made at RCR, like Doug said, they need to work. That is an upper echelon race team. It's a legendary owner and a legendary team. They got to be in victory lane. So whatever changes they made, yes, they better work.
They've gone with this whole one welcome thing, Doug, meaning welcome North Carolina, because Colleague had an off year last year. They're up there. I mean, there's been a lot of emphasis on getting this whole thing turned around, not only for RCR, but for Colleague and all these organizations that are working up there. Can this whole one welcome thing work and get all these operations turned around?
I think it can work. The question is, will it work? And that'll be answered. I think we'll have an answer to that. As usual, I like by the time you get to the Coke 600 in May, you have a pretty good idea of who's playing for real. And we'll know by then, you're 8 or 9 races into the year, and then you've got a body of work to evaluate. And you cannot evaluate after Daytona. Daytona can be a stumbling block. You can go down there and finish 36th and be last in the points, and the next week you bounce back and you win Atlanta. So don't judge on Daytona, but look at the sample size from the first maybe 10 races of the year. Will RCR turn it around and Colleague turn it around? My spidey senses says no, but I'm hoping I'm wrong.
Well, Colleague a couple of years ago was the organization in the Xfinity Series.
Absolutely.
And last year, they struggled in the Xfinity Series.
Right.
I remember A.J. Allmendinger didn't even get his first stage win until, I think, the second Atlanta race.
Right. I think you're right. And it's when you make some of those shifts, it takes some energy away from other programs and stuff. So you walk that fine line of Xfinity Cup, where do you have enough resources to do both and do it well? But I think also, too, when you talk about, the one welcome, anytime you can collaborate and pull everybody together and, and see what you can learn off of each other and work with one another, we'll see what happens. But, it's going to take a while. And like Doug mentioned, you get to, here in May, hopefully by then everybody has their act together. But I could see it working, yeah. I think it could work and work well.
All right. Can the third one be the charm? Bunch of teams added a third car. Will that be the magic bullet? Stay with us.
For anyone who's worried about back taxes, has not filed tax returns, and doesn't know what to do next, stop and listen. Not filing your taxes can have severe consequences, especially in this political climate. Now that COVID is over, the IRS is getting aggressive, massively increasing enforcement and collection efforts. With politicians making all sorts of promises, especially when it comes to taxes, hiding and not dealing with your taxes will cause you harsh legal and financial ramifications. But right now, the IRS offers forgiveness and writes off a massive amount of tax debt. The Tax Doctor offers a free service that helps people get out of IRS collections and back in good standing with the government. Don't hide or bury your head in the sand. Take advantage of our free service. Call now to learn more. 800-393-5045. 800-393-5045. 800-393-5045. That's 800-393-5045.
Lenny Baticki brings you PRN at the Track every week here on PRN, the Performance Racing Network.
Hi, it's PRN's Brad Gilley. Did you know you can take PRN with you anywhere? That's right. By downloading the PRN mobile app, you can listen to our live race broadcast from anywhere. Make sure you don't miss a second of the action from the track. Download today for station listings and on-demand access to your favorite studio shows like Fast Talk, The Pit Reporters, or Garage Pass. Get all the latest racing information at your fingertips with the PRN mobile app. Available in the Apple App Store and on Google Play.
Hey, I'm Corley Joy for Speedway Children's Charities. The mission for Speedway Children's Charities has remained true since its founding almost 40 years ago, to care for children in educational, financial, social, and medical needs in order to help them lead happy and productive lives. So many children have benefited from our group in the past, but we need your help now more than ever. There's so much we can do when we all join together, so let's start today. Visit speedwaycharities.org to learn more. I thank you in advance for your help.
Let's get back to more Pit Reporters on the Performance Racing Network.
And welcome back, along with Jeff Taylor from the CW Charlotte, Doug Rice of PRN, Brett McMillian. Glad to have you with us. Number of teams added a third car this year, Jeff. And, we all know that multiple cars seem to help organizations. And sometimes, though, at least the first year out, adding that extra, it's kind of like when you have kids. Having a second kid isn't double the work, it's 3 times the work.
Right.
So when you add a third car, it's not just adding another 50% to the staff. It's a more of a burden on everybody. But you are also adding more information and input if you got a driver who's on the same page as your other 2 drivers. So let's look at some of these teams and see what you think as far as how much is this going to help or hurt these teams. And the first one I'm thinking about is RFK adds a third car, got Ryan Priest in that third car. Is this a good move for RFK? Because Brad Keselowski's I think, has done a really nice job turning that organization around.
Absolutely. I don't like it. I don't. For me, it's always been 2 solid cars that have run well. And like you said, Brad's done tremendous, what he's brought to that program has been awesome. Bringing the third, and listen, Ryan's a great driver. I get it and stuff. I always struggle with taking the resources away. It's got to go somewhere. So, it was 50-50 and now it's 30-30, 33 and a third all the way around. I don't see it helping. No, that's just me.
Doug, what are you thinking?
I think it depends what team you are.
Right.
I think Trackhouse and RFK will be fine with 3 cars. I mean, I think Trackhouse benefits tremendously by adding Shane Van Gisbergen because he'll win a race. He's going to win one of the road course events, and that puts you a team in the playoffs. So I think for them, that's a net gain of a playoff team. If you're somebody else, RFK, I don't know. They were able to win with both of their drivers, but they've added the driver that hasn't won a lot in this game. So what do they get in all of this mix? Did they pin a winning driver over there that's going to propel them? So I think it has to do with how good you were before you added that third team. And if you were a weak 2-car team, you're probably going to be a weak 3-car team.
And I agree with Doug. I mean, I had a friend of mine who does fantasy was asking me last week, and they had they paired the drivers into groups ahead of time, and the group that had Shane Van Gisbergen, I said, I immediately picked him. I said, he's going to get you a win or 2.
Right.
Absolutely, because I agree with Doug. I think he's going to win a road course race or 2 in the Cup Series.
That's the one team I would say benefits tremendously from that because, like you all both said it perfectly, he's going to get a win. And it would not stun me to see him get a win at, like, Daytona. I mean, or Talladega or even, one of these courses that kind of have the road course feel to it. I can see him, and it was a brilliant move, and I think it took that Trackhouse organization, which was good. 2 great drivers, 1 races. I think it takes them to another level and puts them up there right away with, the Hendrick and the RCRs.
All right, what about 2311, Doug? They add a third car. That's Riley Herbst, who has basically no experience in the Cup Series, but, he brings some sponsorship with him, and he's a guy that I really thought kind of began to really come into his own in the Xfinity Series last year.
He's come into his own in the Xfinity Series. I think that's going to be frankly, it's going to be a struggle. And I like Riley, but I don't see him coming in making a big impact right off the bat. I think they're pushing a big rock up the hill. They've got Tyler Reddick, who is very good, and a lot of people have him maybe not even as a dark horse candidate to win a title. You got Bubba Wallace, who fell off a cliff last year and did nothing. He's got to regain his footing and come back. And now you're adding a guy fresh out of the Xfinity Series that hasn't done a lot of winning. He's won a couple of races and he improved some last year. I think that's going to be tough sledding, 3-car team or not. I think you've got 1 proven winner there and 2 other guys that have a lot to show.
Yeah, the 2311, you're talking about, like you said, 2 drivers, too, that kind of short fuse. I'm like, just can kind of, not be best friends with other people out there or whatever. And so I just think that they had more issues to deal with the 2 drivers and getting that team back on track. and then you add a third kind of let's like Doug said, they're trying to push a big rock up a hill, and I don't think it's going to be easy to do.
Well, and the other thing that's, talking about big rocks, there's a big rock hanging over that organization with this whole lawsuit, whether or not that affects the team in general or whether or not the ownership can separate the team out from this whole thing, because this thing's going to hang over them, I think, Doug, all year long.
Yeah, they think about that every day they walk in the door at 2311. The whole sport thinks about it. I feel bad that we're going into the year with this cloud, and I know that sounds cliche, but it is, and it's huge, and we'd like to get this rectified. We're not this year. We're not going to get it done until the end of the year, till this goes to court and get decided. But yeah, it's got to affect that team. And for anybody to say, oh, we don't think about that. Yeah, they do. They think about it every day.
Agreed. I think he hit the nail on the head. You can't walk through those doors to that shop and not be thinking about that. And for them to go racing and do it well, and you can talk to Denny or whatever. It's just it's not a good situation, and I think it hurts them. And if it hurts them, it hurts the sport. And then what's the trickle down effect with other teams to get to thinking about things? Where does it go from there?
Yeah, and the front row is going through the same thing right now, and they had a third car. Picking up Noah Gragson, who's going into they're making it the 4 car. They're picking him up. And again, another team lost the guy that really has been their leader in Michael McDowell, the guy that's really helped that organization grow. They lose him. They got the lawsuit hanging over them. I just don't know if 3 cars is going to help that organization at this point, Doug.
Brett, look at the lineup that they've got. They have 3 drivers in these 3 front row cars. How many Cup wins do they have? 0. 0 among 3 drivers for Front Row Motorsports. Todd Gilliland, decent driver. I don't know that if he's ascending or if he's just running in place. Zane Smith, good driver, but nothing in the world of Cup. And Noah Gragson, who had one of the worst campaigns ever when he first got into Cup. He didn't even make it through the first season, so they've got a lot of work to do. I wish them the best. When I say things like this, I'm not pounding on anybody. I'm just looking at the evidence as has been presented to us right now. There is not a single driver for Front Row right now that I think is going to win a race this year.
I wholeheartedly agree. What I struggle with a little bit too, to Brett and Doug, like I love Michael McDowell, one of the best guys around. I loved it when he won the Daytona 500. I don't think I've ever cheered so hard for a driver in my life when that happened. A great guy. I'm a little curious as whether he made the right move or not. I know Spire Motorsports is going to be, what they are and stuff like that. It always felt to me like Michael and Front Row just had this thing that, they had something going there. And I'm just curious as to see how Michael, like it'll be interesting to see Daytona and see how he handles Daytona and with a new team. I just loved Michael at Front Row.
Yeah, and I'm thinking about how young these guys all are. Right. I mean, think about what's the average age of the guys on this team? What, 26 years old?
It may not be that.
I'm sorry. I'm trying to look it up real quick, and I typed David Gilliland instead of Todd.
Todd
I'm going.
That's all right. I said David on the air a lot this last year.
I'm going. I typed David. I'm going. Todd Gilliland was not born in 1976. So I'm going. No, he's younger than that. But that's the thing. Like I said, you've lost the veteran leadership in that organization. Not that Todd Gilliland is inexperienced.
It would not surprise me to see him run well at Daytona and be in the mix there. I mean, that car, that team, they're good when you get to some place like Daytona. But I don't know.
I think it's inherently scary, though, when you say that about a team. Well, they'll be good at Daytona. Well, so will 35 other teams. And, when you start putting all of your hope and dreams into Talladega, Daytona, and maybe to a lesser extent Atlanta, you're already in a box. I'm not dissing what they do at Front Row, but they've got 3 drivers that have never won on Cup, that have never really been close to winning at a Cup level, and you're taking all 3 of them as a triumvirate and trying to run a whole season. I think it's going to be tough. I mean, I think that's a team that you look at. Are they improving? Are they getting better week to week?
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. Average age is 25, I'm told.
Ooh.
Harold Hamrick looked it up. Yeah. Noah Gregson's the oldest of the bunch, born in 1998.
Yeah.
A young pup.
That's kind of scary when Noah Gregson is your veteran leadership, by the way.
That's right. It was David Stiles looked that up. The award-winning David Stiles looked that up. And, yeah. Well, at least they're older than Bill Belichick's girlfriend. Never mind.
But Doug, Doug, I get what you say about putting all your eggs in Daytona basket. Like it is kind of if you think, hey, we'll have our super speedway program solid, we'll let everything else kind of build its way to it. It's kind of a tough place to hang your hat.
It really is, and we see this over and over again. Well, that guy's a good, and we still call him plate racer, even though they're not running plates. But if that's all you got, then you've told yourself we got 4 shots a year to maybe win a race, or 6 if you count Atlanta in that group. And that puts you in a box behind. Does that mean you're not going to be any good at the other 30 races? That's what worries me when you pigeonhole a team as being a big track expert team. Then you've said, well, they realistically only have a half a dozen opportunities.
When we come back, I'm going to find out what these guys think the big stories are going to be in 2025.
We work hard to keep our cars looking great on the outside, but engine components need our attention too. That's where you can trust Z-Max Micro Lubricant to disperse carbon buildup in your engine and fuel system to keep your car or truck running at its peak. By soaking into the metal of your engine, Z-Max Micro Lubricant improves performance, extends engine life, and reduces emissions. Trust the many customers who've said, "Thanks for saving my engine." Find out more at zmax.com or follow us on Facebook and Twitter.
Imagine the roar of the engines, the smell of burnt rubber, the electrifying energy of the crowd. It feels like America. It's the Food City 500 NASCAR Weekend, April 11th through the 13th. It's racing the way it ought to be. This year, it's a triple-header weekend with the thrill of trucks, Xfinity, and Cup racing packed into 3 heart-pounding days. Visit BristolMotorspeedway.com for tickets and details.
Doug Rice is your host for Fast Talk every week on PRN, the Performance Racing Network.
Dale Earnhardt, he's almost been deified. There's a mystique about him that's never been attached to any other driver, including your dad.
I think there's 2 things for Dale Earnhardt that make him who he is. He was that guy that's your neighbor. I don't care if you live in a mobile home. I don't care if you live in a mansion. He's that guy that was your neighbor. He's the guy that was out in his yard planting his plants. He's the guy that was out there mowing. He's the guy that was out there doing it. He's the guy that drove the truck. He's the guy that got up under the car and changed the gear. He's the guy that put on a uniform and jumped in that car and became your hero on a Sunday afternoon. And you could identify with that. He's really that last guy. And he is, in the words of Tom Wolfe, last great American hero, the book that was written about Junior Johnson. He is that last guy to a lot of people. And he was going to have that following no matter what. It moved to a different level because of what happened at Daytona. Billy Joel, only the good die young. And that's the way you remember it. So I think that moves you to a different place too.
Brett McMillian returns with more of the Pit Reporters here on the Performance Racing Network.
And welcome back, along with Doug Rice from PRN and Jeff Taylor from CW Charlotte. I'm Brett McMillian. Glad to have you with us. All right, as we hit 2025 with the Daytona 500 this week, Doug, what do you think the big stories are going to be, or what stories are you going to be watching for in 2025?
One story that I've got my eye on, can we get a bigger diversity in winning as far as teams are concerned? My unofficial math, last year out of 36 races, 22 races were won by only 3 teams, and that's Hendrick Motorsports, Penske, and Joe Gibbs Racing. They won the lion's share of the races. That doesn't leave a lot for the other teams to pick up. I'm looking to see, can we get a bigger diversity as far as the different teams and drivers winning the lion's share of these races? I think that's good for everybody. We had a lot of different winners last year, but they were picking up the crumbs. I'd like to see these other teams get a little bit bigger slice of the pie. That's a story that I've got my eye on.
But Gibbs didn't win the second half of the year.
Yeah, they went out. Well, Toyota didn't do anything the second half of the year. But, of course, Toyota goes as Gibbs goes, too.
Correct.
Yeah, pretty much. What are you looking at, Jeff?
I think for me, it has to be a sleeping giant will rise in RCR. I think they are going to have a year to remember. And I think Austin will run well, and I think Kyle, I think he starts it with a win at Daytona. And I think he finds himself in the Final Four, and they're there come Phoenix.
Do you think we can have – I mean, we had some unbelievable finishes last year. You talk about Atlanta. You talk about Kansas. Talk about Darlington. Can we have – and obviously we're not going to have this every week, Doug, but can we have similar type finishes this year? You know, even 3 or 4 of them, again, close finishes like that really put people on the edge of their seats.
I think we can. I think it's the nature of this car that NASCAR has that it runs close together. Because you're in such a tight window of what you can do to the car. By that very nature, these cars are closer together, and I believe that's one of the things that's going to prompt tight finishes again. It used to be you could out-engineer people. You could figure out some tricks, maybe more horsepower, be more aerodynamic, and beat the field into submission. I just don't think we're going to see that this year. So, ergo, we're going to get a lot of close finishes.
Agreed. I think with the next-gen car and the fact that, they were within milliseconds of each other last year, even running in the pack. So, and even a lot of the races that maybe weren't close, up until the last maybe 5 to 6 laps, they were. And, I mean, we saw great racing in a lot of the stages. Still not a huge fan of the stage race, but I get it. But just the fact that even in the last 15 laps, even if somebody broke apart the last 3 or 4 laps, it was good racing, and I think with, like Doug said, it's so close. You can line them up and drive them, and I think that's what happens. We'll see them. Yes.
One of the teams that intrigues me, and we talked a little bit about them earlier, is Trackhouse. Daniel Suarez gets the win last year by a hair in Atlanta, and then just kind of disappears for most of the rest of the season. Ross Chastain struggles for a lot of the year. Finally gets a win in the playoffs, but doesn't make the playoffs. And then we talked about Shane Van Gisbergen coming on full-time in Cup, where we fully expect that he's going to win, a road course race or two. You look at that organization, and there's smart guys running that organization. Justin Marks is a really smart guy. I think he sees the future as well as anybody in the sport right now. And I would be surprised if they don't bounce back and have a much better year this year than they had last year. Would you agree with that, Doug?
Ross has to get over being traumatized a couple of seasons ago. He came out and there was a spell there that it looked like every race he could be winning, but then he got into trouble. Then Rick Hendrick says, I'm going to tell Chevrolet to be bad to you. And I felt like he sort of retreated back into a shell for a while. Come on out, Ross. People love wild and reckless watermelon smashing Ross Chastain. I think he can bounce back a little bit. Shane Van Gisbergen's going to take care of himself. He'll win 1 or 2 road course races, and Jeff even thinks he could win the Daytona 500, so I'll go with that. Daniel Suarez, you got to show me. You won 1 race last year. You had 2 races you were competitive in. The rest of the time, we didn't see much out of Daniel. I'd love for him to be in the mix. He's good for the game. He's likable. He brings a brand-new audience. All the ingredients are there. They've just got to shake him up and make him the right kind of winning cocktail.
100% agree. I think it's one of these things, like he mentioned with Ross, like get out of your own way. Go be the racer you've meant to be. Daniel Suarez, you can race a car. Go. Like, you know what I'm getting at? It seems they get to this point and they kind of, whether it's back off or whatever's in their head, and like you said, Justin Marks is a brilliant owner and just done wonders with the team. I think Shane might be the best driver in the crew. But those other 2 just need to kind of get out of their own way and go racing and kind of forget all the junk that goes along with it.
Spire has thrown a lot of money at that organization. And, like we talked about, they've added Michael McDowell, who could be that veteran leadership. But we know all the time money cannot buy success necessarily. Does it in this case, Doug?
I'm waiting to show that it does. Right now, I feel like never has so much been spent to go so slow for so long. They don't have that. We had, and their leader of the pack over there for a good while was Corey LaJoie. Of course, Corey's charismatic. He talks a good game. Unfortunately, the results were never there. That's why he's not in a Cup ride this year. Can they find the right person that can sort of get them to the promised land? I don't know. I mean, they've got Gamebridge money. They have sponsorship. They have critical mass. Is that enough to propel you on? Until I see different, I'm going to say no. But, It's one thing to have a winning truck team. It's another thing. It is the Grand Canyon of success to move from having a winning truck team to winning on the Cup side. It's going to be tough. Just like I said earlier, Brett, I think it's going to be really hard to unseat the big dogs in this sport and try to win and be successful on a consistent basis.
And for, Spire Motorsports, I mean, you're talking about Daytona. They've got Michael McDowell. You're a 500 champ. You've put the money into it. You better, run top 5. I mean, I don't know. And it just becomes, we know in this world that we live in, whether it's the NFL or the NBA or Major League, whatever the sport is, we've seen people put tons and tons and tons of money into something, and it just doesn't work. I mean, there are NFL teams left and right who spend $200-300 million, and you're like, hey, this team's gonna be awesome. Yeah, no. So I think they got a tall hill to climb, and it'll be interesting to see. I'm curious to see how they get out of the gate at Daytona with Michael McDowell.
Well, and I thought Carson Hocevar showed a lot of growth last year, Doug.
That's a guy that I hear so much buzz about, and I get it. I think part of it was Carson's been given limited shots, and he's flashed well. I mean, you have to go back to a couple of years ago when Corey LaJoie got the shot in Chase Elliott's car, and they put Hocevar in his car, and he outran Corey until his car broke. And I honestly think that was a huge blow for Corey LaJoie's career, because here you are, you're in the best equipment ever, and a guy hopped in your bucket and was beating you tremendously. So we'll see. I want these other teams to be successful. Like I said earlier, I would like to see more equity among all of these teams, but you got to go out and prove you can do it. People like Hocevar because he gets a lot of speed out of whatever he's in.
And at the end of the day, it's good for the sport. Like what Doug said, when these other teams win, I mean, if you get 3 teams that are winning every week, fans aren't going to show up. People aren't as excited. So I think, these teams that we're talking about need to rise up and show up on Sundays or Saturdays.
Or Saturdays, yeah. Finally, Doug, does Chase Briscoe has got a lot of pressure on him this year. Best ride he's ever been in. Does he live up to the hype?
He needs to. I think he will. I think he's had enough time to season, and I feel like he's in a good environment. He's taken over a car that's pretty good, but you know what? He's not under as much pressure because he's not walking into a car last year that won 7 races. He's walking into a car last year that didn't win. So I don't think pressure to perform is going to be that great on him. Just be good, be solid, and I think they'll be happy with the results. Because like I said, he's replacing a driver in Truex that didn't win last year and really didn't perform at a high level for most of the year.
I mean, it'd been a while since Truex had really done. I mean, it had a really, really solid year. So I agree with him. I think to step into that car with that resources and that team, I like him. I think he could be one of the surprises of the year. I think you could easily see him top 10, win a race or two, and get there.
Yeah, I'm rooting for him. Like you guys talk about, great kid.
Yep.
Love to see him be successful, and this is the opportunity he's been waiting for. When we come back, time for our white flag lap. Stay with us.
Look, how do you feel today? Maybe you're a little hungover again, feeling a little embarrassed about a few things? Listen, why haven't you called yet to get help? Man, aren't you tired of feeling this way? So listen, whatever your party drug of choice is, there are ways to get clean and sober, especially if it's messing with your life. Hey man, we all have choices. You can make a choice right here, right now, today, to call the number I'm about to give you and start a brand new life without drugs or booze. I know it's hard to think about this, but imagine how great your life could be. And all it takes is one simple phone call. I've got a team of people standing by ready to check your insurance and let you know what it takes to get clean and sober. Okay, so get ready to save this number, because here it comes.
800-296-1140. 800-296-1140. 800-296-1140. That's 800-296-1140. Paid for by the Detox Treatment Helpline.
Catch Kyle Petty's Back Then Again Country Countdown with Charlie and Debbie here on PRN, the Performance Racing Network.
Hi, I'm Ryan Blaney, a third-generation race car driver, and we dedicate a lot of our time to going as fast as possible. But when my grandpa was diagnosed with Alzheimer's, it was a very unexpected bump in the road for us. It's important to notice if older family members are acting differently, experiencing problems with their memory, or having trouble with routine tasks. Early detection of Alzheimer's can give your family time to explore support services, make a plan for the future, and access available treatments. If you or your family are noticing changes, it could be Alzheimer's. Talk about seeing a doctor together.
Here's Christopher Bell.
My Toyota Camry TRD race car isn't cheap to build and prepare. I have a pit crew that maintains and fixes my equipment. I have a spotter high above the track watching my back, talking me through turns and potential dangers on the track. I physically train to handle the stress of driving. And I have software helping my crew chief and engineers make the right strategy calls. And with all this, I never take my eyes off the road, and neither should you. One distraction can change everything in one instant.
We're back with more of the Pit Reporters on the Performance Racing Network.
And welcome back. Time now for our white flag laps. And first up from the Performance Racing Network, it's Doug Rice.
Thank you very much, Brett McMillian. As you know, I'm a big science fiction geek, and the movies in the Dune family have been very impressive. The very first line in the first Dune book says, "A beginning is a very delicate time." We go to Daytona. It's a delicate time, especially if you're trying to get off to a good start. And I'm referencing that because we need a good start for the entire season this year. Last year, we went to Daytona. We didn't run until Monday. Mother Nature, be kind to NASCAR this year. You got us through the clash at Bowman Gray without any weather. Let's get through Daytona without any weather references and be wrapped up and done with racing by 6 o'clock Eastern time on Sunday and get the season kick-started with a great Daytona 500 that's not impeded with weather.
Amen. I hear you.
I'll agree with that one, absolutely. Nobody wants to be there till Monday.
That's right. Next up from the CW Charlotte, Jeff Taylor.
Thank you, Brett. I guess I'm going to give some kudos to NASCAR in terms of getting back to its roots. In terms of Bowman Gray was awesome. I loved being there. It was just a special weekend to see those cars go around that track and those fans. But also, the week before was the Rockingham test. To see the Xfinity guys back on the track at Rockingham and how fast that was, and just to see a place come back to life in North Wilkesboro, getting back to some of those while also not losing the future of, hey, let's go to Mexico, let's do this, let's do that. I think they're finding a happy medium, but kudos to NASCAR for getting back to some of those tracks that made the sport what it was.
Absolutely. All right. Yeah, but too many people will say now it's too many races in North Carolina.
Hey,
that's
why
already
they left. Started.
It already has.
That's why they left in the first place.
I know.
Well, it's hard to believe. We talked about this at the top of the show, that between now and the first weekend in November, there will not be a single weekend without a NASCAR National Series race. Not one. The Cup Series only has one weekend off, and that weekend will be filled by the Xfinity and Truck Series running at Rockingham. There is no other season like it in sports, and you could argue that golf is similar with the 39-event schedule, but last year there were only 6 players that participated in more than 30 events, with 35 being the highest. A NASCAR driver is required to be in all 36 races, and then you throw in the Clash and the All-Star races. That's 38. Yep, it's a long year, and it's a grind, not only for the drivers, but for their entire teams and the folks back at the shops as well. So as fans, appreciate what you have. Appreciate the dedication that goes into this sport. It's a long way to November, and you will be entertained every single step of the way with no breaks. All right, Doug, so who do you like in the Daytona 500 this year?
I'm going to go with a guy that only won once last year, Ross Chastain. I want to see a Florida guy bust open a Florida fruit on the start-finish line.
Oh, I like that. Jeff, how about you?
I'm sticking with Kyle Busch.
Oh, a first-timer.
I think he gets it.
Matching Earnhardt.
Yep.
Winning his 20th
right,
time.
Exactly. Absolutely.
Finally gets it. That would be one heck of a celebration.
For that team, yes.
Yeah, Doug and Jeff, I appreciate you guys being here, and it is time to kick it off for real. Daytona 500 this week. The season begins, and then we just keep rolling until November. Thanks a lot for being with us. We'll talk to you next week on the PRN Pit Reporters.
Join us again next week for the Pit Reporters on PRN, the Performance Racing Network.